Now in the previous video I created a job called Mark's Job, and the purpose of this job is to back up a couple of databases. Now if I ever want to see what's in this job, all I have to do is right click it, go to Properties, and I'm back in the job, and I can look at the steps, and if I want to see what's in a step, click on the step, click Edit, and I can go right back into that and I can see what's going on, see what's happening. So I've got my job set up, and I'm just going to OK back out of that. Now let's go run this job. Now I could set it up on a schedule, but what I want to do is just kick it off manually. And if you remember, I've told this job to back up 2 databases, and when it's finished, report it to me with a net send and write something into the Windows application log. Okay, so let's right click on the job, and notice I'll kick it off manually by choosing Start Job, and you will notice that it comes up, and I'll start the job, and you'll see it, status of success on both of them. You'll notice it sent me a messenger, a net send, and do be aware that the net send won't work properly unless you have the messenger service turned on. And Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 by default does not turn that on. You have to turn it on to see these net sends. But these things are great for these demo type situations. Notice it's showing me that Mark's job was run, how long it took. It only took 2 seconds. There's nothing in either of those databases really. And it's telling me the job succeeded. It tells me who kicked it off, which was the last step to run, step 2, and it backed up the Mark database, and it was requested to start at step 1, backup sales database. And so I just click OK here. Now, remember I told it in my job out there to write it in the Windows application log, so if I click Start, Programs, Administrative Tools, and go to Event Viewer, then I can go into the application log, and you'll notice here, let me make this a little wider, this is telling me that the job engine put some information in here, and if I double click it, it wrote into the Windows application log that the SQL Server scheduled job called Mark's Job succeeded. It was invoked by the administrator to shows me the steps that ran and so forth. So this is a really neat thing to do. Now you can set this up any way you want to report on success, to report on failure, however you'd like to do that. Now notice one other thing that I can do. Couple of things here. First of all, I can view the history on my job, and if I right click and do view job history, you will notice that I get this reporting tool here where I can see my particular job, and I click on it and I can expand, and I can actually see the steps that executed on the job. Let me make this a little wider. Boy, I really like the way they made it where you can make these things wider. So you can see that my step IDs are out here. Notice you see the job outcome, the backup Mark database, notifications. Notice the message that went out. And you see operator net sent to Mark. So you can see exactly what happened on these jobs as they go. Okay. Notice I can see things on the SQL Server agent and so forth. Now, let me go back here and show you one other thing that was in this job that I want to point out to you. If you remember, inside the job on the schedule, if I went in and edit the schedule, I told it to run this one time, and I could have said run this whenever the CPU becomes idle. Well, what does that mean? It depends on kind of where you're standing and how busy your CPU is, depending on what idle means. Let me show you how to manipulate that. I'm going to hit cancel here. OK out of my job. SQL Server agent, if I right click it and go to properties, inside SQL Server, if I click on the advanced navigation button, then I can define an idle CPU condition. And notice it says when the average CPU usage falls below 10% and stays there for 600 seconds. That's 10 minutes in English. Then that means at that point run this job. Now that's great because I don't kick off a job that busies up my server too much when other important things are happening, but you got to be careful with this one because if your CPU never becomes idle, your job never runs, and so you never back up those databases. But just be aware that you can set that SQL Server agent up to define what a CPU idle condition is, and that's exactly how you would do it. Then you can use it inside your jobs on your schedules. One other thing let me point out to you on the job, if we go back into properties, notice this too. On the schedules, I can have multiple schedules. Now on this schedule, notice I ran it one time on a certain date. Okay, I can do another schedule, and I can call this second schedule. And notice I can have this one running whenever the CPU becomes idle. So this job's going to run both at this time, whenever I told it, and at this one. And notice I'm not limited to the number of schedules I can have. A tremendous amount of power inside these jobs. You can basically set SQL Server up to watch for certain conditions or take care of certain things for you without you having to babysit this thing all the time. And then simply go out and read Event Viewer or read your email to see if things have happened like you hoped.